mortgage companies are not party to your divorce is the bottom line. And that is such a big misconception.
Yeah.
I honestly hear that from people all the time. And mostly it's not people that have retained me necessarily. Like, my ex was ordered to remove me, but the lender won't approve their loan. But don't they have to because it's a court order? The court order is not to the lender, the court order is to the client. And if the client can't qualify for the mortgage, then unfortunately they're SOL, they're probably going to have to sell.
Yeah.
The order is to remove that person from the mortgage. If you cannot remove them by way of a refinance or a release of liability or loan assumption, your only choice is to sell the home. That's the only way that you can remove them.
Welcome to the Divorce Discussions Podcast, where professionals share practical guidance to help you move through divorce with clarity and confidence. Let's get into the discussion. One of the most common and emotional points of tension in a divorce can be the marital home. For many, it's not just about the largest shared asset, it's stability, it's memories, it's where your life happened. But what some people don't realize is that the decisions about the house during the divorce can have long-term consequences, especially when it comes to the mortgage. And unfortunately, many people don't discover the impact of these decisions until the divorce is already finalized, which is when it can be much harder to fix. But have no fear, if your house is the question that has been losing sleep for you, you have found the right episode. Welcome to Divorce Discussions. I am Angie Weber, the director of the Divorce Support Collective, where we seek to reimagine the process of divorce through collaboration and support. And today I'm so excited to introduce you and be joined by Karla Kyte, a national recognized divorce mortgage planning consultant with over 28 years of mortgage lending experience and a specialized focus on the intersection of divorce and homeownership. As a certified divorce lending professional, she provides fee-based consulting to divorcing homeowners and the professionals who support them. Over the past 3 years alone, Karla has consulted with more than 400 divorcing couples nationwide, helping clients navigate complex housing and mortgage decisions before those choices become permanent in divorce agreements. Known for bridging the gap between divorce settlement and real-world mortgage execution, Karla works closely with attorneys, mediators, and financial professionals to ensure settlement language aligns with actual lending guidelines. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Karla. I am so excited to get into this topic with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And like I said before we even started, like you have a lot of experience, like 400 clients in just the last couple of years. Like that is a lot of situations that I'm sure you've come into contact with. So I know you're going to be able to provide our listeners with so much amazing knowledge and information. I kind of want to jump ahead quickly, though. I want to look at what you have seen for those people who do run into mortgage problems after their divorce is already finalized and why that's such a big issue.
Yeah. So, for some people, they're fortunate and we can go back and we can modify their agreement.
Sure.
But that takes amicable couples that are willing to go back to the table and change their agreements to accommodate the mortgage guidelines. And um, you know, I mean, first of all, people don't want to spend more money. They don't want to spend any more time. So unfortunately, a lot of people at that point just throw in the towel and they're like, forget it, we'll just sell the house, even though maybe they negotiated to keep it. Um, I would say, I mean, I'm in the middle of a pretty contentious one right now where it was finalized that they kind of left an open door, saying that either party could buy the other person out prior to April, and if not, then they were to list and sell the home. And so we're kind of down to the wire on this one because one party did decide to buy the other party out. And so it's been really contentious, because values have changed and I wish they would have settled this way, 6 months ago, instead of going through this right now. So, sometimes it will work out and sometimes they just can't find common ground to figure it out.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? And as we talk about on this podcast all the time, we hope for the best when if people have decided to have or go through a divorce, and we hope that the parties can agree and be, mutual. And we know that that is not always
Mm.
the case. There can
Right.
be high conflict because of the emotions that come into these divorces. So it is not uncommon for people to kind of maybe dig their feet in a little bit too and wait till the last minute
Yeah.
for things. So because I know a lot of times when people are going through a divorce, especially if they have kids, it's who gets the kids, who gets the house. And so many people might think, well, okay, if we just decide on who gets the house, like, maybe the mom is going to stay in there. If it's, a heterosexual couple, maybe it's the mom that's going to stay in the house. The dad's going to move out. But what key pieces are they missing with that? When they just say, "Okay, you stay, I'll go." What are the fine details that they need to figure out with that?
Yeah, I mean, especially when there are children, there's most likely going to be support that's paid.
Mm,
Um, and so it depends on the person that's keeping the house. I mean, gosh, there's so much that's pretty loaded. So, um, like we have to look at how the support is paid. If there's going to be alimony or maintenance and child support, who's paying who, how much. So all of that has to be worked in. But the biggest thing when somebody is keeping the house is how is that equity going to be paid out? And that's usually where most of the arguments start because it doesn't matter. Like, I one of my really dear friends is an appraiser, and when she walks in to do a divorce appraisal, she says, "Look, like we're what we're doing here, neither one of you are going to be happy with,
mm,
because one of you is going to want a higher value, and one of you is going to want a lower value."
mm,
And so, determining the value, I think a lot of people's, um, ideas on value are skewed right now anyway because they're stuck a couple years ago when values were higher than they are today, and, so they're expecting more value there and a bigger payout, and, they're disappointed with what they're getting paid out. So, I mean, we're trying to navigate that piece, and then once we have determined what that is, can the person that's keeping the home afford then to buy them out? A lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to keep the house because I want to keep that low interest rate. I can afford that payment. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but that's not all there is. You have to be able to afford that buyout piece. How much more is that going to add on monthly? Are you going to negotiate away your retirement? I've seen people give up their entire retirements to keep the house you know, um, so that kind of stuff, I mean, all I can do is show them on paper, this is what you're doing,
yeah.
and figure out if it makes sense, but I can't make the final decision for them, you
Mm,
know? So
yeah.
it's very tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, there's so many pieces that go into it. Now, from all of the people that you've worked with, what would you say? Because we already talked about like a house. It's a physical thing, but it carries so much emotions. But why do you
Yeah.
think housing is such a big stressor, or maybe one of those more like high conflict topics when it comes to divorce? Just from what you've seen with your clients.
Yeah. So this is a different story today. I've had my divorce certification since 2017, and I will tell you until the interest rates went up in June of 2022, figuring out the divorce was not as complicated as it is today. And it's that ultra low interest rate that so many people are in that is making this so much more confusing and the cost of housing. So between the super low interest rates and the spike in the housing values, it's just making this whole process more difficult to figure out, and just more difficult to plan around. I mean, I think to be honest with you too, something I've seen in a lot of the work that I do is that difficulty has set the stage for more clients to actually be more amicable. I
Mhm.
think when they talk to me and they see the numbers, they realize like we've got to figure something out here. Like it maybe is not even possible to keep the marital home, right? And so maybe we're moving on. And sometimes it just takes people time to work through that. Some of my initial calls with people after we do a workup for them are pretty hard. A lot of tears, but it's a realization, and I can't sugarcoat the numbers. The numbers are what they are, right? And so it's a lot of getting real, and keeping their head in the game and helping them understand that this is not like a death sentence that they're getting. It's just maybe a little bit of a different life that they didn't imagine right now. And you're gonna move on and maybe you'll find somebody else, to share this burden with, right? This burden of the monthly bills, right? That go along with homeownership. So it's just a lot of it's an emotional roller coaster with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, throughout any part of divorce, whether you're in the contemplation stage or you're, it's post decree, there's going to be peaks and valleys throughout that whole journey. It's not like, hey, at the beginning, you're going to have 5 bad emotional days and the rest of the time it's going to be fine. I
Yeah.
mean, those just kind of come up here or there and they can come out of nowhere. So, divorce, yes, again, is so emotional. A lot of divorce coaches talk to about how a divorce is 90%, 80% emotional, 10% financial, and 10% legal. And so the emotions really affect really much everything that you do during the divorce. So as people are going through the divorce, again, I'm sure you've seen a little bit of everything with different scenarios. What are maybe the top 2 or 3 biggest mistakes you see people make with the housing during the divorce, and maybe give some kind of advice to avoid those pitfalls or mistakes for our listeners?
Yeah. So I mean the biggest mistake is people negotiating when they don't know how they qualify. Um, I always tell people, and I say it a lot in my videos too, um, if you think back to when you took out that mortgage and think about how much fun that was working with that loan officer for that approval, it's never fun. There are very few people that say that they had a good experience, in the mortgage process, right? And believe me, we try as hard as we can. We don't have the time to educate every single person on the process when we're taking them through it. A lot of times it's moving fast, and we people just really have to trust us that we're going to get you to the closing table, but it's never super fun, right? I mean, we're asking people for so much documentation and they don't understand why, and we try to explain, but bottom line is they don't know why. And I think one of the biggest problems is that when people are going through divorce and they're thinking about what the money that they have coming in, whether it's from employment or if it's from support, child support or alimony or whatever, all they think of is, well, I'm getting this much money. Of course I can afford this payment.
Yeah.
But maybe we can't count a portion of that income, or maybe we can't count any of it. And so you make agreements based on a number that you have in your head that you think you'll qualify for, fine. And then you get to dealing with the servicer afterwards, during if you're trying to assume the loan or refinance or whatever,
Yeah.
and you don't qualify. So, I mean, that is hands down the biggest problem,
Mm.
especially when there is a large chunk of support that's being paid. Um, it depends on how it's paid. It has to be paid out properly for us to be able to count it. And there is a lot of different ways that support can be paid. And if it's not done right, we can't count it at all. And a lot of times after that happens, I hear from them, well, why didn't my attorney tell me that? Or why didn't my mediator tell me that? It's not your attorney's job to make sure that you're following the lending process, that you qualify for a mortgage. It's their job to make sure that they've legally separated you properly, right? So that's what we hear a lot of there. I'm trying to think. Did you want more examples or?
Well, if you maybe have one more, or just share like a little bit about how, so it sounds like to kind of avoid that is just make sure that you're communicating clearly and correctly with your mortgage lender. Even though, as you said, like it's not the most fun experience. It's not like, hey, I
Yeah.
can't wait. But it's really important to ask the specific questions, even so that they don't fall into this mistake and then turn out with maybe a bigger headache at the end than they were anticipating.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially in a situation where somebody's trying to assume that low rate mortgage,
Yeah.
there is no loan officer ever. You're dealing directly with the servicer. And so there's nobody that has your back that's trying to get you to the finish line. Like if you're doing a refinance or you're purchasing a new home and you're working with a loan officer, they're going to do everything they can because they don't get paid until they close.
Sure.
Um, but you don't wanna go down that path and spend money and time if you're never gonna get there.
Yeah.
And I would caution people to, when you're in this space, I mean, first of all, if you're not doing the early planning stages with somebody like me, there are a very small handful of us that do this work prior to finalization of divorce that do this consulting work. There's maybe 20 of us nationwide. So if you're going to skip that phase and you're just going to move on to a loan officer, hopefully you find a loan officer that is at least a CDLP and they have the divorce certification because you will hear yes from them all the time. And then when it comes down to it and they're trying to get your loan done, they're going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do this because they don't understand the nuance between mortgage and divorce. And they don't understand exactly what those guidelines are that have to be met. So I would caution people on that. Make sure that you're working with a proper professional that can get you to the finish line here. And if you're doing an assumption, unfortunately, there's no one that you can talk to.
Mm.
So there's even a smaller amount of us that actually help facilitate assumptions. There's maybe 5 or 6 of us nationwide that will help you facilitate an assumption after a divorce. So
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Now, I kind of want to ask you too. Is there anything that people who are listening again, who are kind of going through this, what's going to happen with a marital home? Is someone staying? Is someone going? We just need to figure out the numbers. What would be best case scenario if they're going to come talk to you or another lender who specializes in this? What should they have prepared before coming to talk to you?
to be honest with you, I it's so individual.
Mhm.
I mean, you're like you could have your basic qualification docs, but
Yeah.
I really I I don't let people hire me without doing a consultation first because if I can't help you, I will tell you. Like I can ask some pretty quick questions and get through it to figure out if I can even help you through this. Um some people are referred to me for the wrong reasons. I had a gentleman that was referred to me last week well, it was through a friend of a friend, and he really needed legal representation. And so I wasn't able to help him for anything. I actually refunded their money to them because they did pay for a consultation. But I knew immediately when I read, they left me a little note, and I was like, oh, I can't touch this because
Mhm.
I'm not an attorney and you need an attorney. So, I wanna have a conversation with them first to find out if I can actually help them and if I'm going to be, um, if utilizing my services is going to be advantageous to them through the process. Sometimes I'll have people come to me and they make really, really great money. There's not gonna be any support paid, there's no children or no young children, and I'm like, "Trust me, you're good, you don't need me, move on," and I'll give them a little couple of tidbits on what they can do.
Yeah.
So really, I don't have any advice on what to like bring to the table. Like,
Sure.
bring yourself to the table, make yourself totally available for some questions for 20 minutes, and we'll get down to what it is. If you retain me, I will send you a list of everything that I need.
Mm,
Um, but even for that consultation, sometimes I will have people send me a bunch of documentation
mm.
and I'm not gonna go through that if you haven't hired me yet, you know?
Sure.
I'm not gonna spend an hour and a half digging through your documents when you have not retained me for that purpose. So, it's really just have the initial consultation, see if we're fit. I'll tell you what we need to move forward, or if we don't need to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and we love that. Like, we love the people, especially for the Divorce Support Collective. One of our goals is to have professionals who want to collaborate and support people to help them from contemplation to thriving post decree, but also staying in our own lanes of like, hey, I'm an expert in just this, and I'm going to tell you if I can or can't help you. And I'm also going to
Yeah.
guide you into the right places and people that you need in order to help you accomplish your goals for whatever, thing you're working on at that time. Um, so I want to go back a little bit to um, just with mortgages. Well, actually, I have one more question
Mhm.
actually before I go into
Okay.
that because you're saying you met with a gentleman who was referred over to you, but he really needed legal device or advice, and you want to have a consultation with them first. What if you do have a more contentious divorce? Maybe someone's listening right now and they're thinking, okay, so we decided to get a divorce. We're kind of trying to figure out if one or both of us or one or the other can keep the house. But what if it is very high conflict and the one person just isn't even open to having this conversation right now and getting the numbers? Can you work with just one side of the divorcing
Oh, yeah.
case to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the majority of the time I'm only working with one person.
Okay.
Um, which is it's too bad because I'm really effective when I am working with both, but I know that's a hard sell for a lot of people, and we don't have to meet together. I can still work with both parties, and we don't have to have I I actually prefer to not have joint meetings because even when people are amicable, it's weird. You know, I'm not their mediator. I'm not, I'm strictly looking at the housing. But yeah, I work with only one client all of the time.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and sometimes the other client gets a good little tidbit because I relay it to them through, the one client.
Sure.
So yeah, it can be helpful sometimes even when I'm not working with both, but helpful with both of them.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify that because, again, we can hope for the best in a divorce
Yeah.
situation. We can hope that everyone is amicable and everything goes along just as good as it can in a divorce. But it's not always butterflies and rainbows, and this is real life. And emotions get played into it, right? Because we have that emotional piece of the house of we create all our memories here. Maybe we have kids, and I want them to have the stability of being in their house, and or whatever the other reasonings are for them wanting to keep it. But I want to kind of go back a little bit to, someone assuming the house versus, you talked about before in previous conversation how people can often assume like a court order resolves everything. But why doesn't the decree automatically remove someone from the mortgage?
Because mortgage companies are not party to your divorce is the bottom line. And that is such a big misconception.
Yeah.
Um, I do. I honestly hear that from people all the time, and mostly it's not people that have retained me necessarily. It's usually like I'll get messages on my social media and stuff. Like
Yeah.
my ex was ordered to remove me, but the lender won't approve their loan. But don't they have to because it's a court order? The court order is not to the lender. The court order is to the client. And if the client can't qualify for the mortgage, then unfortunately they're SOL, they're probably going to have to sell.
Yeah.
Um, the order is to remove that person from the mortgage. If you cannot remove them by way of a refinance or a release of liability or loan assumption, your only choice is to sell the home. That's the only way that you can remove them. So, um, a lot of people think because it was a court order, that the lender has to comply. The lender, and I don't mean me, I'm talking about your servicer.
Yeah.
The lender's not part of your divorce, so they don't have to comply.
Yeah. And if they have to be, so they can either sell or they can refinance, right? Which again, when you were talking about the low interest and stuff, I'm sure that's one piece of it of like, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm going to lose
Right.
this amazing interest rate, even though I'm still living in the same house. So is that kind of where a loan assumption can be another option, or can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah. So, first of all, when everybody refinanced during COVID into the low interest rates, most people refinanced into a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan.
Mm,
Those loans clearly state, if you look through all of your paperwork, that they are not assumable loans.
mm,
What that means is that they are not assumable by a third party. So if you were to put your house on the market and sell it, you would not be able to allow whoever to come and purchase your home and assume your low interest rate loan
Sure.
because it's not assumable. But in most cases, that loan is eligible for what's called a release of liability in the case of a divorce.
Mm.
So where it gets tricky is what if both people are not on the mortgage? And right, so that's not technically a release of liability, but I will tell you most lenders are allowing that. So let's say that Bob bought the house before he and Jane got married. And then he and Jane got married, and then they get divorced, and Jane is awarded the home, and she needs to remove Bob, but she's not even on the loan.
Mm.
So they still call it a release of liability or an assumption, because there is a court order awarding the house to her. And so most people will, or most lenders at that point will allow Jane to assume that loan from him. I mean, she really is assuming the loan from him, but it's a divorce and there's a court order there. The court order isn't mandating that that's what happens. The court order is allowing it to happen
Yeah.
because that's kind of in the guidelines that there has to be a court order awarding the home to her.
Yeah.
Um, there's also cases too where I have seen with my own eyes that they will allow a cosigner that's not occupying the home to help Jane qualify. Because what if Jane has been a stay-at-home mom and she doesn't qualify? Um, Maybe Jane's father can co-sign for her so that they can assume that loan from Bob. So it's possible. The more you kind of throw into it, the less likely it is that the investor is going to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which sounds like that is obviously, I know you're very talented and you're knowledgeable and you can provide a lot of support for people. But, one thing that we always kind of try to highlight throughout these conversations too is that when you start in a divorce, it can feel very overwhelming of like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know who I need. And oh my gosh, the price tag associated with all of this can be so expensive, especially if people are listening and thinking, well, I just thought I just had to get a lawyer. Like, that's the only piece that I need. I just need to make it to the finish line of signing that decree, and a lawyer is the only way to get there. But utilizing services like you, it sounds like, can actually save people money in the long run because they're not having to finalize stuff and then go back if something is wrong, like we kind of started out talking about. So, can you describe a little bit more, maybe some tidbits about why people want to get this done before that decree is signed and finalized?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is kind of this: you either need divorce mortgage planning or you don't.
Mm.
So, if you need it, you need it. I mean, there, it's not, it's not like, "Oh, should I do it now or should I do it afterwards?" It's like, you need to do it now because you're most likely negotiating things that you can't actually accomplish. And, like the price tag. So we can talk about that really quick. And, even as a divorce coach, right? Like you as a divorce coach take a lot off the plate of the attorney. So maybe instead of shelling out, whatever an attorney costs in your area, here they're like 6 to 800 bucks an hour.
Mhm.
If you can take some of this off of the plate of the attorney and help them with it, I know that can it's not adding anything to it. You're actually saving money.
Yeah.
With the work that I do, hands down, they are saving money.
Yeah.
I mean, we will go through the scenarios and comparisons and make sure that what they're doing moving forward makes sense. Like so many people are they want to salvage that super low interest rate no matter what, and they're not looking at the full picture. They're
Mhm.
not looking at the fact that if they do a refinance, they will now have a write-off because they haven't had a write-off for years. So you have to consider that into that whole picture and make sure that, maybe your cash flow is better if you do a buyout refinance and you get rid of that low interest rate as opposed to doing an assumption on the low rate and then taking out a home equity line of credit at best case 7.5%.
Mhm.
Right? So you have to really crunch all of these numbers and make sure that what you're doing makes sense. And then a lot of people don't even know that an assumption is possible. So like right then and there, can save you thousands. I had a discussion with a CPA the other day. She was retired. She had not been in it for a while. But she thought that she could keep the home and that when she paid out her ex, and there was a ton of equity in this home, they owned it for over 30 years.
Mm,
She thought when she paid him out that she would get a step up in basis on her capital gains when she sold the house.
mm.
And that 20-minute phone call saved her over $100,000.
Wow.
So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, I don't know, like if you want to put a price tag on this, it's really hard to because
Yeah.
there are some little things here and there that you maybe just don't realize until we get into a conversation and we get into the paperwork. With that conversation, it was right at the very end of the phone call when we caught that possible capital gains issue.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
because people just don't know what they don't know, right? And no one gives you like
100%.
you don't get married and they're like, hey, just in case, here's the manual for divorce, if that's where this leads. So it's kind of like figuring it out as you go. But luckily, there are amazing support systems and professionals like yourself that will help make the process a lot smoother, even on those emotional days, but also help you save money. So thank you for,
Yeah.
again, kind of hitting that home of, it can feel overwhelming to have your support team, but it's so essential for so many different reasons,
Mhm.
especially actually saving you money in the long run. Because I talk about it on this podcast all the time is that if you try use your lawyer as your therapist, that is going to be one big therapy bill. And so there are different ways around it besides doing that. Now, it kind of leads me to another question just from your professional perspective, because again, at the Divorce Support Collective, we're all about staying in our lanes, but we also are all about providing information and education for the different people that you want on your team. And I know you already work with quite a few professionals specific to divorce, but for someone who is going through a divorce right now, who would you say are the top 2 or 3 professionals that they must have on their team?
Besides an attorney?
It could be an attorney or a mediator, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody has to go the attorney route. I think probably one of the biggest misconceptions is um, thinking that because you are financially complicated, that you have to have an attorney, or if you're high net worth, that you have to have an attorney. I mean, you don't. You could be extremely amicable and you could be self-employed and own 14 properties. That's complicated.
Yeah.
Like that is financially complicated. But you could be very, very amicable. And so you could work through, you can come up with your own plan. You can take it to an attorney at the end and say, "Does this look okay?" Right? Like, because I have seen judges turn people away. So I have seen pro se cases where they try to figure things out and then they get to the judge and the judge is like, "Nope, that is not an equitable split. Um, come back and see me in a few weeks, go talk to someone and have them straighten you up." But I still think that there's a lot of stuff that I mean, I basically handled my own divorce. I did not go pro se. We had an attorney, but it was a family member. And so I specifically asked for no advice to be given, that we would make all of the decisions. So I think that people can do that and they can still get through this process. So back to your question, that was long-winded.
It was
I would say, so a CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, um, if they are actually working in the capacity as a CDFA. So keep in mind, if you're looking for a CDFA, I think only 5% or I don't know. It's a very small percentage of CDFAs that actually do CDFA work because they're financial planners as well. Um, and so if you can find a CDFA that actually does the CDFA work, they can be instrumental in untangling a very complicated, a very financially complicated marriage. So I would say CDFA for sure. I already hit on the divorce coach because I think that like, I think people look at that as an extra expense or it's like a bougie thing,
Yeah.
and it's not. It's more of a savings because 'cause you're taking that load off of the attorney instead of, like I said, paying that crazy fee for an attorney. And I think attorneys welcome it too.
Mhm.
They want you guys on board just as much. Um, I mean, of course, a CDLP, if you're a homeowner and you wanna stay a homeowner, It doesn't matter if you want to stay in the home, in the marital home. If you want to be a homeowner moving forward, you need to be working with a CDLP to make sure that what you're negotiating is going to work.
Yeah.
So, and that goes for the person paying and for the person receiving.
Mm.
I've literally helped. I had clients one time. This was early on when I first got my certification, and she was trying to buy a home, and she couldn't get qualified because she hadn't received her support for long enough. And so we flipped her into a different loan program, so she only had to receive 3 months. And then I had to have her extend her support because it wasn't being paid out for long enough to qualify. And when we went back to the table, this couple was super amicable. When we went back to the table and renegotiated it, and they just went to the courthouse and like redid it. They didn't
Yeah.
have to involve attorneys. Um, I found out that he at the same time was trying to refinance the marital home because he was keeping it, and he couldn't qualify because he was paying her so much darn support. And I was actually having the support lowered because we were stretching it out over a longer period of time and lowering it monthly.
Yeah.
So in helping her, I helped him at the same time get his mortgage approved. So it's just stuff like that. Like if we're all talking, you know, man, I can't tell you how instrumental a divorce team can be when we're all working together collaboratively.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, Carly, you gave so many great just information, tidbits, ideas, things for people to think about. And it sounds like the best place for them to start is just to have a conversation with you. See if your services are needed. Because again, the integrity of your practice, which is something that we hold as one of our core values at the Divorce Support Collective too, is really essential. And so you're going to be able to tell them, yes, you need me, no, you don't, or maybe you need someone else. To
Yeah.
help you with this scenario. So I appreciate your time. And of course, listeners, head to the show notes because you're going to be able to get connected with Karla and just listen to more of her information, get connected with her on her website. So again, Karla, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time on the next discussion.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce Discussions podcast. If this was helpful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next conversation. Visit thedivorcesupportcollective.com to explore resources and connect with our professionals. Until the next discussion, remember, you don't have to navigate this alone.